This is a video response to Oh Hey Dusovsky. I want to thank you for responding to my video and taking the time to enter the discussion. I thought I'd try your graphics out, by the way. I think they're kind of cool. I think I'm going to go backwards here. I'm going to answer some of your points that you made in your video, but I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to start off by answering the question you asked, and that is, if you grant that what I have shared with you is correct in regards to Old Testament slavery, would I be for that type of slavery here in America? And let me just say that I think that's a good question, and it's one that I haven't. It's one of the very few that I haven't dealt with in my video series. Having said that, even though I do think it's a good question, I think it's somewhat of a loaded question, because I think ultimately, no matter how I answer it, you're not going to like the answer. I mean, I thought about all the different possible answers to the question. Not that I don't actually have an opinion. It just seems to me that it's just one of those questions that, it's not going to matter. I don't know if you'll be satisfied with the answer. So let me just give you my answer, and the answer's two answers actually. First answer, well, the simple answers is no and no. The first no is if you're still in your mind defining slavery as non-consensual ownership or forced enslavement or any type of slavery where people are treated less than human or don't have any type of rights, then absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't think the Bible condones this, by the way. That's the whole point of the video series. And I'm not interested in going back to pre-Civil War America. So if that's what you're, and I don't think it is, I think you're pretty adamant that you're talking about slavery as I've shared, or as I believe the Bible talks about. Now, even if so obviously if we're talking about any type of forced enslavement or anything like that, then absolutely not. Now, if you're talking about slavery as it's legislated here in the Old Testament according to the Mosaic Law, I think the answer is still no. And the reason for that is simply because Israel, the nation of Israel, was an ancient nation, first of all, and it was for a time it was a theocracy, and later on it became a monarchy. And to put it simply, I think their systems would not work well for us. Okay. Having said that, I don't think our systems would work well for them. The systems they had in place were designed for ancient peoples dealing with ancient problems in governments or government systems that were very different from our own. And so we have mechanisms in place that deal with poverty. We have unemployment insurance. We have welfare payments. We have all types of charities. To me, those are sufficient enough. I don't know if we need additional avenues to alleviate poverty. And frankly, I'm afraid that if we were to bring back any of those old systems, you would see widespread corruption or mistreatment. And in fact, Israel, one of the points I made is, I specifically spent 8 videos talking about the Mosaic Law and how it was supposed to be. But I did make the point, I believe in video 8 or 9, that Israel didn't follow the law. Even though the law was considered given to them from God, Israel still didn't follow it. So clearly people will mess it up. And so I think there's no need. Like I said, we have our own mechanisms for dealing with poverty, and I just assume improve those. There's no need to bring any others into the picture. Again, I know you're not going to like that answer, and you're probably going to you're going to tell me it's a cop-out. Well, sorry. I mean, I feel it's the truth. When you look at the Old Testament, you're looking at a document that was written for a group of people for a different time and place, and not everything could or should apply to today. The other thing that you talked about that I thought was very compelling was the children, and I agree with you. I have children, and I certainly can't imagine under what circumstances I would give them up to any type of enslavement or slavery. to get out of poverty. Now, having said that, in our world, we do have people that give their children up because they can't afford them. I mean, I just saw a story just recently, where a baby got dropped off at a hospital, and it happens all the time. I guess when people are faced with outright, they find themselves in desperate situations. They do what they have to do. Having said that, I don't necessarily see the Old Testament law. I don't see a spirit of exploitation. Now, clearly, the Israelites could have, and in all likelihood, they did use the system to exploit people, but I don't think that was the intention of the law. The law was to mediate or alleviate poverty. That was the whole sole justification for the slave system that we see in Leviticus 25:44. And I discussed that at quite a length, I believe, in video 8. Now, you did make an interesting point, and that is you said that, to become slaves, you have to give up some rights. Now, I just want to ask you, what rights did the Israelites or the foreigners in the nation of Israel, what did they give up? Have you ever thought about that? Now, clearly, I would suggest they probably did give up some rights, but the only rights that I see them actually giving up is maybe the right to choose their employer, if you will. But even then, with the Great Escape Clause in Deuteronomy 23:15, if they became dissatisfied with their master, all a slave had to do was get up and walk away, and there's not much. According to Deuteronomy, there wasn't much the master could do about it. But having said that, what rights were given up? In fact, I see just the opposite. I see, yes, property was associated. The label property was associated with slaves, but slaves still had certain human rights. There were still provisions for their protection, and I shared all of those passages in my videos. And they did have certain rights. Slaves could participate in the feast. They were all got the Sabbath day. They got the Sabbath day for rest. In other words, a mandatory day off. That applied to everybody. There are many passages that suggest they could own slaves, they could own land, they could have their own property, they could earn wages. So I don't know what you're thinking of, and I'm curious as to, can you come up with some specific rights that they actually had to give up according to the law? Otherwise we're just kind of left to our assumptions. The problem I have, you made the point that the case that I made is not new. It's simply, you've seen this case from other people, and that doesn't surprise me, by the way. I would expect that you would see this case made in other places, because it's not a new case. And in fact, I believe it's very similar to the one that was made by abolitionists pre-Civil War. So from my perspective, it's a very, this argument, the argument that I've made is very old. But then you bring up the fact that, you've seen a lot of information that would argue against my position, and I would just say that, yes, I've seen that information too, but what I do see is that skeptics seem to make the same claims. And having said that, they make the same mistakes. And let me share with you the problem I have. They'll make this claim that the Bible endorses slavery. The Old Testament endorses slavery. So they make this claim that God endorses slavery, and then they quote Leviticus 25:44-46. And then they draw this picture of Israel going into all these different foreign lands and destroying the cities and taking these war captives. The problem is Leviticus 25:44-46 doesn't deal with war captives. And forced enslavement or slave trading was outright outlawed. Exodus 21:16. So the only thing that can be going on here is Israel's buying slaves, but the only ones that can be doing the selling is the slaves themselves or their families. So in essence, what's being described is a voluntary institution, not forced enslavement or non-consensual ownership. It's a distortion of the scriptures. Thank you.